community partners, and Patty Karban is going to go first. Patty is the principal of Harrison Primary Center, and she has how many different organizations that work with your school? Like 60?
Yeah, like over 65.
Yeah. So she just is a wonderful partner to work with. I had the privilege of working with her for my Once Upon a Time Children's Literature class, 300 level CBL, and she's going to share a little bit about her experiences. Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Patty Karban. I'm the principal at Harrison Primary Center, which is a local school here in South Bend Community School Corporation. It's on the west side of South Bend, and we have, we're a pre-K to 4 building with about 670 students. So a large building, and I think my relationship building with Notre Dame started when I kind of first came into the building. I've been there now just 2.5 years, so I'm really young in my learning as a leader of a school. But just this, or I guess a year ago, I was asked by the Center of Social Center to talk at a breakfast, and so they get the community together, and someone will speak, and then you know, you kind of give your wishes and wants and maybe how people can connect with your school, and then you just mingle and talk with people at this breakfast. And so I would say that happened in the fall of 2015 when we were at Holy Cross College, and I talked, and I ended up meeting Rachel, and we had a really nice conversation, and just kind of laid the groundwork. I know I also met Maricel, and we've had other connections, but she came over to the building and talked to me about children's literature, and she gave me this wonderful list of children's literature that we could purchase for our schools and for our Latino students, and what would be great because our library didn't reflect our students. So I kind of tapped into the community, and then we from there, I guess, you know, we started thinking about how we could partner, and we met, Rachel and I, we met in February of last year. So and we met, we kind of just talked about what were the mission and the goals of the CBL class, and then what were the mission and goals of my school, and where we kind of felt like we could really work together and kind of meet those goals. And at that time, it was really just, we're looking at the opportunity and kind of hoping to make a connection to make sure it would work. And thankfully it did. And so we met about, you know, quite often, and we would take notes and really go over what we are wanting. And I know part of the goal of Harrison Primary Center, and we've been working on it, is to really become a community school. We know that we can't do it alone, and I thought the proverb of, you know, go quickly, do it, you know, do it alone, but if you really want to go far, you have to do it together. And so we've been working on meeting the social, emotional, academic, behavioral needs of our family, of our students, of our families. We want to become a year-round school. We want to have programming in the evenings. We've just been really knowing that for our students to be successful, it's going to take community effort. We have a lot of needs in our school, and so I think when you're thinking about partnering with the community is looking at getting to know what is the community, and really knowing how does your organization fit, and how you could complement the community and get to know the community well. Through our times of meeting, we you know, set goals, and I think at the end of the springtime last year, we decided, yes, we're going to go with this. We had set some clear goals that I would like for our students at Harrison Primary Center to achieve, and Rachel had selected and really set some goals that she would like her students to achieve through this process, and we thought it would be a good blend. Then over the summertime we met again, and before the school year, and I'm just making sure I've got some notes here. So, but in the meantime, I know that I can't do everything, and I can't be there to meet with all of my community partners. So I had to choose a lead person in my building that I knew had the same philosophy, that was just as invested, and really would see this out, and was going to be someone I could rely on. I had particular person last year, and she ended up moving to Fort Wayne. She was wonderful, but she ended up moving to Fort Wayne, and I had hired a new person. Some of you guys may have met her today. Her name was Emily Wilson. She was here at the conference. She was our lead teacher for the project. And she just had a passion for it because she spoke Spanish. She was believed in the community model. She really related well to the college students. She was a super great communicator, and I think that is a key component to making any programs work. So she started with us, and we set up some times. We first went to Rachel's first class, and Emily and I went, and Emily could speak in Spanish, so it was great. She did the presentation in Spanish and in English, but we really just talked about who we were as a school, what they would expect when they came, what were just like basic procedural things, like how do you get to the school, where do you go, what do you do when you're in a school, because a lot of our students hadn't been to an elementary school or primary center since they were there, you know. So there's just a lot of logistical things that they needed to know. So we did all that, and then we set up a Google spreadsheet, and we set up some times that they would come. We knew that first interaction was really important. You know, that first time you meet with someone or anything, it really lays the groundwork for what will happen and how things will work. So Emily met every student. She talked to them. She took them around the building, and then we got them set up with a student in our school. And they would read to our students in Spanish. So they brought Spanish literature. They'd sit down. They'd have about 15 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes, depending on how things went. Sometimes 10, depending on their attention span and where they needed to be. But they would sit down, they would read over some literature together in Spanish, have a great conversation about the literature, maybe about the culture of the book, and then they'd go back to class. And you know, the first time the students went there, they thought, oh, this is great. You know, our students thought it was great, but then every week they would come back, these students from Notre Dame, and it really, our students look forward to it, like, oh, it's Tuesday, you know, they're gonna be here, and that was what they looked forward to. So we tracked the attendance of those students, and our attendance was much higher on those days. They really built this wonderful connection. And students would talk about little experiences about books. They'd come and tell us about the books. And it was just really wonderful for my children to feel proud about their culture, to feel proud of who they are. They could see themselves in the literature they read. I'm gonna get serious. But, you know, golly, I think when I get passionate about something, oh golly, you know, for my children at my school to see themselves as, you know, a Notre Dame student, as someone that they can be here, they can come to college, they could, you know, they haven't even been on campus. Most of those kids, they haven't been on campus. They will. That is something that we are going to do next year because that's something that we realized is that these students, it's right in their backyard, but they've never been here. So we are going to do a field trip here so they can come and they'll go to the library right here and they'll get to read in the Notre Dame library. So it's been, you know, we've had so many wonderful things that have happened for our students because of this. They feel confident in themselves. They you know, have been able to, you know, speak with an adult in their own language in our building. And a lot of our students, they were able to take time out of a day when learning is so difficult because they're hearing it in not their first language. So they were able to take time out of their day and just speak in their first language and read in their first language, which is a break for them, you know, because learning is they struggle. It's really difficult. So that was wonderful. And as our day went, you know, as our time through the semester went on, we we met at the beginning, we met in the middle, and we had a little a meeting with Rachel and Emily, my lead teacher, and we sat down and we wanted to be sure, are we on the right track? What's really happening? What are you seeing? Students would give us feedback on maybe some questions they had and things they didn't, weren't sure of. And then at the end of the semester, we met again. My lead teacher went to their e-portfolios, and we went to their class at the end of the year and talked to them again. We met again in February to kind of recap the year and think about planning for next year and what are some changes we're going to do, and do we meet our goals, and how could we adjust our programming to make sure we meet our goals. Some challenges that happened, are just logistical things, like how is a college student going to get to the west side of South Bend when they don't have a car? So we realized we needed to figure out some transportation, giving a little bit more time for transporting and how they're going to get there. We thought about some students we would pair them up with, and this is just all relationship building, is I may have a really quiet student that really had a difficult time communicating or was shy. We also had one student who had a hearing impairment, and so there were just things that the students had to work through. But I think by working through those, benefits came from both. They learned together. We looked at how to vary the text that they were seeing. Some of the text that that the students were reading to them might have been, much more difficult and not at their level. Although we know we wanted to expose our children to more difficult text, but sometimes it might have been a little too difficult, or the concepts were just, maybe for us, but not, for an elementary student. So we thought about that. We thought about, coming here. I'm trying to think of some other. I think that's really about all. I think mostly the whole process was wonderful because we were able to support our students. We were able to, with this partnership, support our staff, and we communicated our goals from the beginning with our staff, our students, and our teachers. So I think, like you had said earlier, Connie, is that you have to come back around and continue to communicate and keep that focus on what is the mission and what are we, why are we doing it and what are we doing it for, so we all have the same end point and where we want to go. But my students just, I can't imagine not having this in my building. The impact was so great, and it fits our model as a community school. And I think walking alongside Notre Dame and the students of Notre Dame and working with them has been a great benefit. So, yeah.
Jensen is going to go next. Laura is the director of Campito, where Tatiana's class with the immigration, construction, and memory class meets, as well as Andrea Topaz-Rios, whom you'll hear from tomorrow.
Hi, thank you for having me. Before I begin talking about the partnership that we have with the university, I kind of want to just share like a little bit of background information about El Campito, because I have to share a little bit. If I don't give myself like a time limit, I'll go on the entire hour. So we've been around since 1970, a really long time, but what makes us stand out from your typical child development center is that we're nationally accredited. We are state licensed. We do bilingual Spanish-English instruction, and our mission is to ensure all children have access to high-quality early childhood education, regardless of their socioeconomic status. We have just over 70 children enrolled in our child development center. We serve walking age to 12 years old. 79% are living at or below that line of poverty. So for a family of 4, it's less than $27,000 a year. Our average income for our families in our center is $19,900 a year. And so like I said, our mission is ensuring high quality, and there's the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to ensure high quality. And so our partnership with the University of Notre Dame is one of those key partners that we need to ensure that we're providing all children with a high quality early childhood education. So I've been at El Campito, it'll almost be 5 years. It'll be 5 years this fall, so I can't use the new card anymore because I try to still use it. And over the last 5 years, we've been meeting with Rachel, meeting with other professors, and evaluating what are the needs of our students, what are the needs of our families, what are the needs of the community that we're working with. We're over on the west side, and through those conversations and those meetings, we formed two really great partnerships, two very different partnerships, but two amazing partnerships. So the first one that I want to talk about is with Andrew's class, which you'll hear more about tomorrow. But it is working with our preschoolers, our 4 5-year-olds, and Notre Dame students, and using children's literature. So every week, for about an hour on Fridays, a Notre Dame student comes in and they've been paired up with one of our preschoolers. And we're really lucky because it's a 1-to-1 pair. So ensuring that high quality, that one-on-one instruction. And they're reading books in English and in Spanish. So I mentioned that we're bilingual. So our program has one Spanish-speaking teacher, one English-speaking teacher in the classroom. So they're hearing both languages all day. So we have 2 goals for that. One is to celebrate and respect the native language, and 2, introduce a second language as early as possible. Brains are little sponges at this age. So we have our Notre Dame students coming in, and they're reading the children's favorite books. So whether it's in English or in Spanish, they're celebrating and respecting that native language, and they're being introduced to a second, or their native language, and then being introduced to a second language. And the print concepts are the same, regardless of whether or not they're in English or Spanish. You still have a cover, a back cover, a spine, a title page. You're still reading left to right, because we get a lot of questions all the time about, well, what about reading in a second language? Well, those skills transfer pretty easily. So we've got those Notre Dame students reading one-on-one with our students and giving them that individualized attention. Once they're done reading, then they start working on a story. Some of our students are working on ones that continue each week. It's one story. And some of them are random, and that's the beauty of working with 4 and 5-year-olds. So one week it might be the fact that, it's puppies and rainbows and butterflies, and next week their mom likes tomatoes. And at the end of the week, or at the end of the semester, you're going to get this beautiful book published that is truly 100% a child's work. And there are a couple of really great things that are happening during that Friday hour. So not only, like I mentioned, those early literacy skills, those pre-writing skills, they're also working on that social emotional part. They're developing relationships with somebody other than a caregiver, a parent, or a guardian. They're developing a relationship with a Notre Dame college student. So I think it was Rachel that mentioned that bubble. And so we're giving these 4 and 5-year-olds an opportunity to see what college is like. A lot of our families didn't graduate from college. A handful of our families, their highest level of completion is 3rd or 4th grade. So the idea of college is totally different, totally foreign, nothing that's even on their radar. So to introduce that at 4 and 5 years old is pretty awesome. And the parents are excited to be a part of that. They get books to send home. Notre Dame was so generous and gifted a beautiful lending library for our students, and they get their Notre Dame bags and they get to take them home with their families. And they're sharing those books. They're instilling that love of reading. Reading is a really intimate time to be on the lap of your parent and to go through a book. And so for those parents, they're learning the importance of early literacy skills. They're learning a love of reading, whether it's in their native language or a new language. They're learning how important it is to take a book walk, especially if it's in a language you're not familiar with, and using those illustrations as a way to figure out the words on the page. It's been a really beautiful partnership. And the relationships that have been formed for our students, you can't make it up. So last year we had a little boy. He was being raised by his grandma. One parent was incarcerated. The one gave up custody and moved out of state. And so his grandma was all he had. He didn't have a lot of male role models. And so he instantly clicked with one of Andrea's students, and he looked forward to seeing him every single Friday because it was just him. And Andrea's student came from nobody else other than this child, and the bond was unbreakable. And at the end of we have a celebration where they get their books, and it's a room full of kids in new outfits and parents that are very proud, and the students wrote letters and put them in the books for our students. And in the letter was the Notre Dame students' email address so they could stay in touch after the project was finished, because that's how much that relationship meant to the Notre Dame student and this 4-year-old. It was a very beautiful thing. And it was an exciting thing, and it's something that they look forward to every single Friday. And so we're pretty grateful. And like Patty had said, I can't imagine not having these students in our building on Friday. The second program that we work with is with Tatiana. So you had heard about it, the creation of memory. And that has been, when she introduced it to us a couple of years ago, I was a little nervous. I mean, you're asking these families to come and to tell their immigration story, to tell these intimate stories to people that they don't know about. But I thought, okay, I like Tatiana, we're gonna try it. And it was beautiful. I mean, the books that are over on the table there, the relationships that were formed, to hear the conversations that, a grandparent is telling with, to their grandchild about what it was like to come together, and the students write letters, the Notre Dame students write letters to our families and thank them for letting them become a part of their lives. And with our families, the Notre Dame students have become a part of their life because they've been able to share such an intimate thing with them. And they've given them something concrete that they can pass down from generation to generation to generation. And now we're at the point with our families that are you doing that project again? Are we going to do that project again? I want to be part of that project. Because when we first started, it was like, I don't know. And now they see this beautiful masterpiece, and they want to be a part of it and have something to pass down. So the students gained a lot and our parents gained a lot, but our parents also, just like in our preschool program, they got introduced to university, what college is like in the United States, that, this could be a possibility for my family, that Notre Dame is real. We get to be a part of this community, and for these Notre Dame students, they get to kind of break out of that Notre Dame bubble, and they get to be a part of our South Bend community, and that's a really powerful thing. And so I think both projects, the ones working directly with the families and the ones working directly with our students, they go back exactly to our mission of ensuring all children have access to high quality early childhood education. And for that, we're truly grateful, and I can't imagine not having these programs in our building, and we're excited to continue conversations and seeing, what next year will look like. And the students in our 3-4s classroom, they're excited to move into the 4-5s classroom because they want their Notre Dame buddy and they want their book at the end of the year. And so I think that's pretty telling to the impact this partnership has on our program. So thank you so much.
This is our last community partner, and you may see that there's kind of a progression. Patty is new one time, but moving forward. Laura, we've been working with Campito now. This is the 4th semester that Tatiana's class. Sam at La Casa. La Casa is a long-time partnership. Notre Dame was actually instrumental in helping La Casa get started over 40 years ago, but specifically in terms of Spanish CBL, the last 7 years.
Nice. So hello. I'm going to be checking my phone just because I put my giant clock on there. All right, so I can just check when I have to be done. Because I, like Laura, will talk about La Casa all day long. And so La Casa was founded in 1973 by Father John Phelan. So we were connected to CSC and the priests here on campus since our inception. The outside of our building has Father John Phelan painted on the outside of it. So we've been connected to the institution from our inception. And so it's been interesting. I'll share a little bit about what La Casa is as an organization and does, and then talk specifically about CBL and then about community partnerships. But we're the Latino Community Center in town, originally founded to work with youth, but now really we're a full spectrum social service agency. So everything from a young woman coming in needing help filling out a protective order, to translating people's mail, to helping with immigration paperwork, to we run a preschool as well, and after school programming. We do a little bit of everything, to adult English classes, prepare people for the naturalization process. We do a little bit of it all. Like today, we also are community advocates. Today I spent all day touring 20 students from St. Mary's College around the neighborhood and teaching them about the history of migration in our neighborhood, going to the local taquerias and restaurants, and which is actually the exact same thing we did with Maricel's class last weekend. And so it's a way that we teach people about immigration, challenges in the community, and we educate people about our community. And we always run into really interesting things, like a lot of Notre Dame students are from the Chicagoland area, and they'll be like, I wish there was a Latino community like this where I grew up. I'm like, pretty sure there is, you just haven't been there yet. And part of what that experience does is when they go home, they're going to go find that community out, and see where that group is. Because no matter where you live in the United States, there's a Latino community there. It might not be as big as ours or as big as Chicago's, but there's a taqueria somewhere. So one of the things I wanted to cover, so I'm kind of batting cleanup a little bit, and Laura and Patty did a great job talking about partnerships and building with the university. One thing that I wanted to cover as well that Patty had mentioned is that we're really good partners, and part of this Notre Dame relationship helps us partner. And so I share a couple things. Like Laura and I are both people that in the neighborhood, people don't assume we speak Spanish. And so, running organizations that are primarily Mexican immigrant speakers, we run into a lot of the same interesting challenges, and we both have different educational backgrounds. And the way that we do this community work has created great partnerships in two organizations that historically hadn't worked great together. And so this Notre Dame partnership really has helped our organizations really strengthen. And I'll share my favorite Patty story. I don't know if I'll embarrass her a little bit, but we haven't always had a great relationship with South Bend School Corporation. And when Patty became the new principal at Harrison Primary, which is the large primary center or grade school or whatever you call it where you're from in our neighborhood, that fall was when President Obama announced the DACA expansion in DAPA. And so we're like, look, we need a huge space in this community to do a forum for families. Where is that? People are like, Harrison Gym. Like, oh. And so we're like, all right, well, there's a new principal, man, let's try. And so we called over, they're like, yeah, you can use the gym. We're like, what? You sure? Yeah, you can use the gym, that's fine. So of course, as we're preparing for our first event at Harrison, we're like, okay, we gotta clean up, we gotta be polite, we gotta have it organized, we gotta not make a mess, we gotta worry about everything, say please, please, please a million times, thank you. We were really prepared, and as we're setting up, there's some kids kicking a soccer ball in the lobby of the school, and I'm heading out there like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get in trouble, and someone's gonna break something. They're kicking a ball with Patty Karban. And so it's like, okay, maybe the superintendent, don't tell the superintendent. But it was like, and then from there, it was just like, yes, we're going to be able to work together because we have, the best interest of our community, and she's just been such an awesome partner over at Harrison. And part of that is we get to interact in these different environments, and we all care about benefiting our community, just like Notre Dame does. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of that CBL. So we're a community-based learning site. I'm a community-based learning coordinator. I have an interesting background in that, is that I worked in higher education administration for 12 years prior to becoming a community organizer and working with La Casa. I started the community-based learning program, or its civic engagement program, at Indiana University South Bend here in town. So I understand the pedagogy from not necessarily the academic side, from the student engagement side, working with academics and connecting with community partners. Now I'm a community partner doing it in a different order. And this model is just perfect and beautiful in that it is very focused on all needs of all partners getting met. That the students are legitimately learning something that impacts and relates to their classroom experience. That I, as a community center, am getting the needs met of my center, and I'll talk a little bit about those in detail. But that I'm helping the students learn. And that Notre Dame isn't just sending students out to be like, go do whatever, and just send them back and make sure the professor knows they did 8 hours or whatever, they're 16 hours or whatever they had to do. And that it isn't that, it's legitimately we're involved in helping each other meet our outcomes. Notre Dame wants their students to engage and strengthen their learning. As a community organization, I want our community to get stronger, to create advocates, and to send the Notre Dame students out to wherever they're going to be as advocates for our community. And so it's really, really a great two-way street. So I'll share a little bit about that capacity, the long term of our relationship, And so we rely every semester we get around 100 to 120 Notre Dame students that volunteer at our center. And so usually about half of those come to us through an organized class, the other half are just regular volunteers. But so we rely on that labor for our programming. We wouldn't be able to do all of our youth programming in the afternoons if it wasn't for community-based learning classes. And so part of that, making sure that that's reciprocal, is that we have to make sure the students are having a good experience. I think Patty mentioned that when they come for the first time, orientating them, making the students feel welcome so that they know they're not just here to do community service. It can't feel like court-ordered community service. It's faculty-ordered community service, right? It can't feel like that, and they're not coming to mow the lawn and to trim bushes, even though I need that about this time of year because it's spring. They're coming to do activities that are going to help, impact their learning and what they're doing in their program. And so it has to be really reciprocal, and we're able to grow programming because we can count on this labor. So Maricel's one of our long-term instructors. Almost every semester, it's at least 15, 16 students who are coming to us every week through her class. And when she took a sabbatical, we were like, I don't know what we're going to be able to do. Like, who allowed this to happen? This is not fair. But even then, the institution, others thought, like, Rachel and and even myself before she left, like, we're talking to other professors who might teach a special course this semester to make sure we were going to have the students that we needed tutoring to be able to help in our programming. So I love the little parrots or whatever kind of and so that's a little bit about that capacity building and the long-term growth. And that's where, being able to also see these student outcomes. I want to talk a little bit about students coming back. So we do have a lot of students. Last year, Becky, what was her last name? Warnhoff. Becky, one of our students, volunteered with us for 3.5 years. Came second semester, I want to say maybe in Maricel's class, or did she do that later? I know she did. She was in your class one time, maybe? No? With there was in Rachel's classes?
She was in one of my...
And had come through a CDL course and then just kept coming. And the only semester she didn't come was when she studied abroad. And she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, well, you're going to be, I forget where she went. And then after graduation, she's now in Chiapas. Doing work there, and she says she's one of those students who said my career path changed from a CBL course to seeing the work that your organization does, and I wanted to do that later. And right now we're working with a student who's volunteered with us several semesters, Aniela. Ended up interning with us last summer, and she's fantastic and wants to do social justice work. We're connecting her with folks in Milwaukee, which is one of her target cities. And so we've really been able to have that stream of students who come and volunteer through community-based learning and really get engaged in what we do. So the Spanish partnership, I know they talked a lot about the hours. A large percentage of those hours, I guess almost half of those, if not more than a third for sure, are coming to La Casa de Amistad. So as we're about a $500,000 a year nonprofit, so we're very, very small. And so that size organization, to be getting thousands of hours from one source of support is huge. The dollar value of that is in the six figures every year. So it's a very important benefit that they provide us. So in terms of how the relationship works, talking about a little of the nuts and bolts about how we really make sure that it's very authentic community-based learning is the ongoing communication. So with the instructors that we work, we talk 3 months before the class starts about like, here's what I'm changing this semester, I'm including this writing or I'm doing that. We talk about feedback of what the previous semester and how things went, what some of the challenges were, what some of the really good wins were that semester, and then we work through the semester. And then about halfway through the semester, we meet again, usually around spring break-ish, and talk about what's going well, what's not going well, talk about end of semester. And we also, every year, I think we talked about the project. So every year, we now kind of